Hey everyone, Scott Hansen here from NFL Red Zone. I hope you're checking out 1 hour of 5 Yard Rush, one of the best podcasts on NFL football in the UK.
Good evening, Rush Station. We are back. We are back with another flagship show. And Danny is here with me, of course. If you missed out last week, Danny is now part of the team. And it's so good to have him on board. Danny, how the heck are you?
Evening, guys. Yeah, I've had better weeks. I don't know. I don't know if I've spoken to a couple of people about it, but I've been off work all week. I had a problem with my hand. I now look like Michael Jackson with the white glove. I don't know. I suffer from eczema. I don't know. All of a sudden on Sunday, fucking blisters everywhere. I got sent to A&E on Monday. So it's not been a good week. I can't type or nothing. I can talk, but I can't type. So it's been one of those weeks.
Oh, bro! But look, you're here. You're not on IR. You've done better than George Kittle, where you've managed to actually...
I'm from work, though, this week.
You'll work IR. Yeah, but you're not on IR for the important stuff, which is being on the pod here. So, we've got a bit of a... It is week one. We're back. Well, week two. It was week one last week. What were your takes on the week, Danny, in terms of the games being back? Were there any sort of surprises, anything...
Yeah, I think
you kind of sort of stood out for you for week one,
just absolute chaos, really. To be honest, it's like you get people. I've seen so many comments from people panicking around, is this the way the season's going to run? Based off week one. But history's told you, week one is just an absolute mess. There's all the teams are trying to settle down and get into the swing of things, and they've got new coaches and new players, and everything's different. And people base their whole perception of what happens in that very first week. But yeah, I suppose the Bills game was just mental. That's one of my main ones. And then seeing that Booker scored two touchdowns on his debut as well. And now people are talking like he's a top 5 wide receiver after one game already. And it's just it's either that or the opposite of players who had a bad game who are now finished because they had one bad game as well. So it's I remember writing down some notes and it said in bold letters, stay calm, it's only week one, stop, no need to panic just yet if you've had a bad start.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's every year. And I always find that the noise around week one is so great because it's been such a long time without football. People finally have something to analyze that's meaningful. And then I think with the influx of content creators, with the influx of media, plus society as a whole, we're just impatient as people now, as a society in general, where we're less tolerant to let things play out and we just want instant gratification.
Shiny toy. They also want the shiny toy as
well. Shiny toy, but also just if things don't go well, it's people forget that it's a long season. It doesn't feel like a long season, but it's a really long season. And there's a lot of things that are going to change. I was trying to calm people down in the week and saying, look, this is one of the worst week 2 waiver wires I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to think of a week 2 waiver wire where the top ads were a former first round wide receiver who was 4th on his depth chart in preseason is now all of a sudden a shiny ad. Marquise Hollywood Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown, who has had more, I don't know, he's had more sort of false dawns that have never happened than any player I can think of, except Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts himself has come back and resurged to be a thing, and tight ends. And it's just guys, if this is what week one is, then we're fine. We are where we are. And I think for anyone that was sort of following along and watching week one, I think if you did well, great. If you didn't do well, that's okay. There's plenty of time.
Yeah.
I actually think, I think people got to see it as preseason week 4. But then what I would also say is that there wasn't a lot that really shocked me. I feel like we were pretty well prepared. We talked situations. Most of them came up all right. The one that was, there was a few that were in flux. I think they were called mostly right. Yeah, you're going to get some stuff wrong. I think, Brian Robinson Jr. looks a bad pick now, but he's entrenched in that 49ers backfield. But I mean, it's not the worst thing, but he's not the value he's going to return. But, we advise people about ETN. That looks all right at this stage. There's a couple of situations you've still got to analyze, but I feel like the reads off season to now so far feel all right. There's no real cause for concern. If I lost, then I'm not worried, and if I won, I'm not over celebrating. I think it's just one of those things that you have to just let things calibrate. And I know we've got here on some of the notes here, we've got some pieces around some of these things. So
just before you mention that, what you're talking around to not panicking. So for example, in the last couple of hours, I've seen two things that jumped out at me. One of them was Mac Jones going for over 100 fab in competitions that only have 200 fab. And then I also literally 10 minutes ago in one of my dynasty leagues, somebody picked Mac Jones off the waivers about 2 days ago or 1 day ago and sold him for 2/3 already today. It's the whale's just going mad.
I mean, it is nuts. And I looked at some of the waiver spends for Quinton Johnston, and I'm like, I mean, listen, this dude has to be a stud rest of the season for you to get ROI on that money. I was telling people on Tuesday that 5% of fab is about as far as I could reasonably go. And I think it's as far as any person should reasonably go, because I just don't have enough confidence that he could be great. And what's his best outlook? What is his best outlook? Tell me the number in terms of wide receiver finish that he has to come to justify the 20, 30, 40% fab spend that people were putting on him. I think he'd have to be top 15. And you just sit there and think, I just don't have enough confidence that would happen. I just don't. I don't have any confidence. I have none. I think his ceiling is wide receiver 3. I think that's his ceiling.
We're in the same division, aren't we? Me and you for Warrior Ball. And there's already 3. I think there's already 3 in that division that have spent over 100 fab or close to it already, and it's week 1.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking, I mean, you do you, right? And I'm not here to criticize how people play the game. At the end of the day, you got to do it how you want to do it. But if you're interested in winning, right? The thing is, some of the bids in that league were all right. I mean, the Quinton Johnston bid was nuts. The Keyshawn Booty for 43 was nuts. But then I look at Calvin Austin for 7. I think that's a good bit of fab money out of 250s. Yeah, 7's good. I got Jake Tongs. Not that I really believe he's going to be a thing, but I just kind of $3 out of a 250 fab. So he's a 1% of fab. fine. And then a couple of players went for 1-0. And then today, Mac Jones goes $101. And you're so you have put, what's that, 40%, 45% of your fab on Mac Jones, where if all things aligned, the best outcome is you get 5 games.
Maybe not even that.
And I don't think you get that. That's the best outcome, is you get 5 games out of Mac Jones. So really, you're going to look at, I think, 3. I think 3 is the number. And then I look at the performance and I think, I just don't want it. I don't think I would have even bid. I just think I don't think I've got him over anyone really significant in fantasy football. And I think
that'll tie into some of the questions we've got, because we've got a lot of questions around would you start him in the flex, or would you play other players over him? So I come to that in a bit, but there's a few questions all around that.
Yeah, and I think it's the way I would always pose these sorts of things is, would you do this in week 6, week 7?
Yeah.
And what's the circumstance? And I think the thing that people don't understand is when they listen to fantasy advice, whether it's here, whether it's mainstream, wherever, right, is it lacks context, right? It lacks context. And so whenever people ask me a question, my first question back is, what's the league? What's the scoring? What's your roster like? I'm like asked to like keep trade cut, and you're just like, well, I don't know your roster, so like, what's the settings? Is there anything you work?
Warrior Bowl, for example, you get loads of minus points for interceptions and stuff like that. So like that's different than some of the other ones.
And incomplete passes. So you look at someone like Mac Jones, who hasn't got a great history in that area. You think, I just think it's you're putting your like. I don't want to go as far as say you're putting your tournament life out there, but you are putting a lot. Like I'm trying to. I don't know how much fab I've got. I think I've got around 240. I have spent like pennies here and there. I'm just looking. Like I picked up like Iomanor before the season for $2. You picked up Fanning for $5 before the start of the season, which looks absolutely lit. And like
I've got loads of Fanning before the season started. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean it's great play. Like, and that's the thing. Like you just you have to kind of just look at things and think, okay, what's the position of where you're at? Sorry, it's a 200 fab league, not 250.
Yeah, 200 for Warrior Bowl.
Yeah, it's 200. So yeah, 50% fab on Mac Jones. So I've spent $6 in that league. You've spent $5. There's quite a few that haven't spent any. There's 3 teams at the bottom. The 4 teams at the bottom haven't spent a penny. There's one in second place who hasn't spent any, and there's one in the middle who hasn't spent any. So there's 6, and then like you've got. It's to be fair, it is only a couple of people that have spent. You got the guy who spent half his fab, and then you look at his roster and you think, well, okay, you've got Aaron Rodgers, Cam Ward, and Jordan Love. Was Mac Jones someone that you really desperately like needed in the short term? Because I don't think you did. Like, as bad as Cam Ward is, I still think he's going to finish above Mac Jones. Like, I think if you'd lost a few quarterbacks, it might be a different story. But anyway, I think the whole thing is context is really important. And like the one thing about fantasy advice that people action and then perhaps don't think about is actually the context is missing in that fantasy advice.
Yeah.
And you need to have that. You need to apply it to, and we could do the best we can in terms of trying to guide for your league. But at the same token, we need to make sure that you're looking at what's best for you. And like I had someone say to me, like, sorry, I said someone with trades. I had someone come to me and say, like I looked at your rankings and I got these 2 players and they're pretty similar. And I'm like, okay, but my rankings are half point PPR, right? So what is it? Scoring, standard, or half point? I doubt it's half point. So if it's not half point, then then the context is like, well, I need to know the scoring. Like if you're just going off the rankings, make sure you got the right scoring. Scoring's not right, go to the person who came up with the rankings and be like, okay, would you change this based on the scoring? I think that's really key. And just situational pieces. We talk about trades all the time. People ask me about trade advice, trade calculators. The reason I think trade calculators are nonsense, okay? And like if you use them, I'm not downing anyone. But the reason I think they're nonsense is they don't have context. What that doesn't have is the needs of each team and what each team needs, what each team's getting in return. So people will make me a trade off a trade calculator and go, well, this trade's fair, so you should accept it. And I'm like, yeah, but you've offered me a quarterback and I have 3. I don't need another one.
Yeah. I think that
it's not going to do anything for me. It's like, what like that's the part I think that's really crucial is if you line up the right trade partners, you actually don't need a trade calculator. You just thrash out a deal that works for all parties. And
I think the calculators are a little bit better for Dynasty than they are for redraft are a nightmare. But Dynasty's a bit more accurate. But again, it comes down to your own needs of your own team and what suits you. So the best thing for those ones is to look through your league in advance and say, okay, I need this position, and I've got too many of this position. And you start looking at the teams that way and then trying to propose them something that benefits both of you, and you're more likely to get the deal done.
Yeah, and I think as well, you've got to look at the league you're in, and if you understand the personas of the people, like I wrote in one of the books, I can't remember which one. I talked about, like one of the things I always used to do, and I don't do it now as much because I've got so many leagues, but the leagues I care about, I still do this. I have a notepad, and I basically note like each person in the league, who they support, what sort of players they're kind of into, what positions they like in their history of picks, what's the sort of style they go for? Do they go for the big power running back? Do they go for the flashy wide receiver? Are they a lover of tight ends? And I know all these things because that's the nuance, that's the context that a trade, having that information, and maybe it's different. I do business deals for a living, like that's my job.
Yeah.
So it's my job to know the other side. It's to know what the other person is trying to get out of a deal, and it's knowing everything about them the same way they know about me.
Yeah.
And it's trying to thrash out a deal that works for all parties. And so the part that I never understand in the trade process is people throw out a trade that you can tell they've never looked at your roster. Yeah. And you're just sitting there like, you've not even looked, like I can't even counter you. You're so far away from what I'd even consider. And it's not necessarily because it's a bad offer on paper. It's just not what I need.
Yeah.
Like the best offers are the ones that get you thinking, oh, okay, actually, I don't actually, the ones that catch me off surprise are really good offers. And I think, wow, that's actually got me thinking. Or the ones that are like, actually, that's not too far away. We need to finesse this a little bit, but I don't think we're far away. And you've got something to work on. Yeah. And you can tell that people have looked at your roster and gone, okay, I think there's something there. I think we can make something work. I'm going to throw something out there. Let's see what we can do.
But it's so important to what? I mean, you've got to change the mindset when you're trying to do a trade. Yeah. It's not about, I need to get one over on this person. It's like, how can we both come away with where we're both happy with our deals, and you're much more likely to get the deal done. If that person thinks you're trying to rip them off, even though you're not, it's never happening. So like, you've got to try and think of, well, what would make them be happy, and then also look long term as well. So you might the short term you might lose value, but in the long term that player is going to be worth more. Maybe come towards the playoffs or something. And it's that type of thinking you need as well, not just instant. I make this trade now. Who's better off?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point, because do you know what? There's certain people that when you do deals, you'll do more deals.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in a dynasty league, if you do a deal with someone and it's pretty painless and pretty good, and you're like, okay, this person gets it, you'll do more deals. And actually, like, there are people in leagues that I've had for a very long time that actually, when I get an offer for a player, I think I'm pretty close to accepting it, I might message the guy who I've done 8 or 9 deals with and gone, by the way, this is the kind of thing I've been offered.
Yeah.
Like, and actually, I might push the deal a different direction because we're such a good relationship, and I think some people find me very easy to trade with, and some people find me very difficult to trade with. The ones that find me really easy to trade with, I actually don't bother. I try to put a good offer out the table pretty quickly, and it's either people don't accept it because they want to hold the player, hold the asset, and that's absolutely fine. Like, you don't have to trade. Some people don't like my valuations, and that's fine. That's there's always a value differential. I'm never going to knock anyone for that. But there's some people I do trades, and people don't count; they just accept. Like, yeah, do you know what? That's a good deal. I'm happy. And it's like, I'll even say to them, like, I've probably overpaid it, and I'm all right with that because I'm in a situation where I'm trying to be aggressive. I'd rather do this now. But hey, when we do a trade down the line, just remember I did you on a favorable term here. And the same way that if you're trying to bridge something and it's like you throw something in at the end, it might be an extra pick, it might be something, hold that over them a little bit. Say, look, okay, I'll give you the small win this time. You give me the small win next time, right? And I think, in those are the kind of things that don't happen often. And I think they're the things that make good players great. That if you know how to trade and how to flip deals and get deals done, I think it helps a long way. Redraft, it's much harder because it's a shorter season. People are less inclined to give up assets, and people are less inclined to deal. Yeah. And that makes sense. And it's a much harder place to do deals, but they can still be done. And I think you've just got to find. I got a cracking deal earlier where it was, and I haven't accepted or declined. I haven't even messaged back, but it was Tyreek Hill for DJ Moore, and I'm like, well, that's genuinely like a really good offer in the sense of, it's not good enough for me to smash accept, but it's good enough to where I think, well, okay, the guy's obviously wanting to gamble on upside, and he's given me a favorable, safe asset in return.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'll probably do it. But I'm like, they're the kind of offers I'm like, wow, do you know what? Fair enough. Like, someone's just gone out there, first offer, has put it out there, willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, those people, they're the people I'll do deals with over and over again, because it's like, I'm not going to have to negotiate that deal. I'm either going to do it, I'm not going to do it. And if I don't do it, I'm going to do it. I'm not doing it for the same reason he wants to do it.
Yeah.
In the fact I'm chasing upside. So I think, yeah, you're right. People try to win deals and people forget that the season is short and the off season is long. And so you want to try and get your objectives in a row and just really study your opponents and think about ways in which you do deals that work for everybody. And I think if you do that, you're in a pretty good spot. But also just remember that, like, it's supposed to be fun. Like, there is just certain people I won't do trades with because they just lowball me all the time. And I just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Like, it's like every time I throw a really good offer out there at them, they're like, nah, I just want a bit more. And I'm just like, I'm not even going to nickel and dime you. Like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
If it starts to feel like a job, I'm not interested. Like, I've got a job where I do deals. I don't need a side hustle where I do deals. Like, that's enough for me. I think that's key. I think you've put some really good thoughts into our sort of doc here. And I think the top one in particular, I think, is a really good discussion. So do you want to ask, and what sort of prompted you to come up with that? And then I can start to dig into it.
The schedule one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a question from a few different angles. So it's like I've started joining a few IDP leagues for the first time as well. So it's a little bit regarding that. But mainly it's more redraft, as in what I'm trying to figure out is, I suppose what I'm doing is comparing it to other forms that I've played. So when I play, say, FPL, for example, I'd mock up I'm a business analyst, so I'm into spreadsheets and everything else as well. So I would have always had this big sheet with all my players, their fixtures over. I would look maybe 6 weeks in advance. And I'd have them with all highlighted in green where I thought that's a good fixture, that's a bad fixture. Mm-hmm. So it would tell me, like, by about week 5, okay, this guy is now going to have 3 red games on the run. I need to start looking at replacements before I get there. And it gets me thinking about it from our point of view. And that's where I struggle, because it's not like we're in football, in Premier League football. It's normally, if a good team's playing against a bad team, they're going to get loads of goals and it's easy to predict. But in this, it's very different, and you get different types of outcomes, and the games are played in different ways. And it's not necessarily the best player in the team who's going to get all the points against the crap team, because he might also be limited in his minutes. They might save him for other games, or there's all different ways. So what I was trying to figure out is, how would you go about looking at, I'm trying to look at the next player I want to get, not this week's player. But for example, you mentioned Fanham before. I got him the week before week 1. Now everybody wants him. That was quite a bit lucky on my part, but I was trying to plan ahead, and that's what I want to do with. In other ways, I want to look at, okay, well, I know, it's not your studs, it's the ones that are playing in the flex, or the ones that might go into the flex. I want the next ones that when I bring them out, okay, these guys now have got a good run of fixtures and I want to put them in, but I want to get them before everybody else gets them. So
it's such a good question, and it's one that unfortunately doesn't have a simple answer, because it kind of moves through the season. So the big difference to Premier League and Fantasy Premier League and NFL, other than the fact that you got very set positions, and there's a very set way that football is played, that the strikers will get the majority of the goals. It's not always, obviously the wide receivers don't get the majority of the touchdowns. So there's that, and then obviously you've got so many different options and so many different variables at play. So the other big variable in NFL to Premier League is Premier League teams don't turn over significantly unless they're Chelsea. That much. Like a big transfer window for a team is 5 players in and a few out, and which 3 or 4 will be starters. And obviously this window in the Premier League has been a bit different, because Liverpool have changed 5 starters, Arsenal have changed 4 starters, Chelsea have changed.
It's very rare though.
But it's very rare, right? So ultimately, and then you've had teams that have had to. So Bournemouth sold their entire defence, for example. So there have been more extremes in the Premier League than ever. But traditionally, it's been quite easy there's a lot of stability and continuity. In NFL, that's not possible. We get so many cases of worst to last to first. It happens very frequently. So when you're doing a strength of schedule at the start of a season, you're basing it off last season's data, and it is bad. Like, it's a bad process, but it's that or no process. Yeah. So there's a few different ways you can view strength of schedule. You can view strength of schedule by a team's accumulated win-loss record over a season, last season, and then you just add that up. And you work out, how many playoff teams they're playing, how many, what's their strength of schedule in terms of total number of wins versus others. Of course, there is variance in that. And this is where at the start of the season, strength of schedule doesn't hold up as much. The other strength of schedule parts that you have to consider are a team's strength of schedule by position. How many fantasy points they've given up to a position. And you will use a cumulative set of data. Now, we're still using last season's data because one game doesn't make a subset. By week 4, we can start to build a model and trend for this season. Yeah. So the first month of the season, you're kind of using last season's data. So you're basically saying, for example, one thing I always talk about is whenever you start a running back against the Buccaneers and they're playing the Buccaneers, do so a little bit at your peril. You have to mark them down significantly because the Buccaneers are one of the best run defenses in the NFL and have been for the last 5 seasons. And if you watch the game on Sunday, they shut down Bijan Robinson. Then he has that big play at the start of the game for 50 yards. That accumulated for like over half of his total line yards from scrimmage for the entire game. And then you say, well, okay, so that happens. So you have to look at matchups and try and determine players that have difficult matchups because there's a correlatory trend, and how long does that trend go? I'm more inclined to trust like 5 years worth of data with the Buccaneers that hasn't trend because it's the same defensive unit pretty much. There's a few pieces have changed, but the coaching's relatively similar. Todd Bowles is still there. He's still the DC. He's been calling the defense there for the last 6 years. So, you've still got Vita Vea's there. Yes, they've brought in Kalijah Kancey, but you're talking about a high draft choice who's come in to replace someone in that position. Yes, the edge rush has changed, but again, scheme-wise, it hasn't changed all that much. There's a good level of continuity you can look at. Whereas when there's a lot of flux and a lot of change, new head coaches, new offensive, defensive coordinators, last year's data set is kind of it's the best we got, but it's not great. And that kind of leads you into a bit of a foray. So yeah, basically when you get to 4 weeks in, that gives you a better picture for strength of schedule, and then you can start to map players. IDP is very different. So IDP, because you're looking at different particular units. So you're looking at offensive lines. You're looking at stats that really matter, like in terms of bad offensive lines. You're targeting those, looking at how many sacks they're giving away, how many fumbles they've allowed, etc. You're kind of looking at where there's opportunities. If you've got a team that's an RB heavy offense, then there's more opportunities for the linebackers and the safeties. So that those players are going to get better opportunities in an RB heavy team, or against an RB heavy team, than a team that's going to pass 52 times a game and just basically throw it over the linebackers. Yeah. So, you're looking at rush attempts, you're looking at pass attempts, you're looking at the number of plays per game. That's going to be really important for IDP. It's one that probably most people don't really understand, but teams that run, so like the Tennessee, like starting IDP players against Tennessee, you got to understand that Tennessee, maybe Miami, are going to run a much lower count of plays. So if you think that those high octane offenses like the Bills, like the Ravens, they're going to run 70 plays a game, at least in most instances. The Texans, maybe the Texans, they're quite slow. Teams that are very slow, that don't run many plays, the Dolphins, the Titans, maybe the Texans to a degree, although they are a better team, might only run 40 to 50 plays. And so if you think about that, that's 20 less plays
It's a lot to take in, isn't it, when you're trying to figure it all out?
Of course it is. It's very, very difficult to map out. There's a lot of nuance to all of it.
Yeah.
So to go back to your original question, because I feel like I've done all of this information is particularly useful. But what I would say is all of this information is good in a tiebreaker scenario. I've got two players. They're relatively similar ranked. That's where strength of schedule, matchup, opportunities are going to make a difference. So, if I've got two linebackers, I've got them pretty similarly ranked. I'm like, okay, well, one is playing Tennessee and one is playing Buffalo. I'm going to start the one that plays Buffalo because he's going to be on the field more, which gives him more opportunity to make plays. But it's a tiebreaker. It's something that goes into the factoring in my projections, but it's not the whole piece. There's a lot of other component pieces.
I'm always thinking of trying to find the edges where possible, doing what other people aren't doing.
So your edges don't come from any of the strength of schedule.
Yeah.
The edges come from peripheral data.
Yeah.
So what is going to be most interesting to people to find the next player, the ascending players, is these particular stats. Targets per route run is a huge one. Targets per route run is a massive indicator. Most people think it's snaps. So most people go, oh, well, so-and-so's only on the field for 65% of the snaps.
Yeah.
But if he's targeted on 40% of the snaps he runs, that's huge. So he's going to get a target on, he might play 60% of the snaps, which equates to 24 snaps, say. But okay, 24 snaps, he's getting targeted on 40% of those. That's 11 targets, 10 targets.
Yeah, if he's keeping getting them each game.
Right. So targets per route run is a really good metric because it doesn't show up in the box score. So looking consistently at people who get targets but maybe aren't making catches, and then it comes to why don't they make catches?
Yeah.
So, there's some really good examples of players who garner a lot of targets but don't actually get a lot of production. And then it's, why is that? And a lot of it is down to they might be the only skill position on their team. It might be that actually there was a particular scheme fit that weekend that kind of worked. You have to look at the correlatory trends, but targets per route run is a really, really good one. Trying to understand, and then it's how do they earn targets? If it's wide receivers, we're talking wide receivers here, obviously, and tight ends. So how do they earn targets? Well, they earn targets through separating, running good routes. So, if you look at fantasy points, for example, they have an average separation score. That's massive because an average separation score is going to tell you whether these guys are really good in zone, whether they're really good in man coverage, and how they separate, because then that identifies their skill set and what they could do and where they're going to be utilized. So then you can start to look, well, okay, this team runs more man defense than anyone else in the league. And we've got a player here who separates significantly against man. He's going to have great opportunities this week. That's where your opportunity comes. Finding that information is tricky, but that's what our Patreon and that's what things out there like the JJ Zacharisons and many others. So looking at the number of routes they run, looking at the number of targets per route run are massive. The other indicators are things like air yards. So understanding air yards, percentage of team air yards is really important because it's giving you that picture for wide receivers, those flex players of, hey, I don't actually need my guy to get 10 targets. If he gets 6 and he catches 4, but his average depth of target, that's another one, is 12, and he hits 12, he's got an A dot of 12, and he makes 5 catches, that's 60 yards.
Yeah.
60 yards with the 5 catches, that's 11 PPR. That's a flex play. Like, that's where you have to understand the depth of target, the role, and being able to fully understand that actually where the production comes from and how it's made. It's like how the sausage is made, right? You kind of have to know how all that works. Yeah. Because if you can do that and you can identify these peripheral trends, that's really important, because then what happens is you end up picking players up and stashing them before they have that big game that's coming. So what you want to do is, it's like stocks and shares. You want to buy the player where everything is pointing towards that upward trajectory, but it hasn't happened yet. And then you buy for those weeks, and it either it sustains, or it doesn't. And so what's really interesting is when people try to interpret this stuff, when they're looking at next man up versus for injury, what they try and do is they go, well, this player is most similar to that player. So it looks like that, Xavier Worthy's out. Well, he's not actually out yet. He could even play Sunday. I don't think he does, but there's a chance.
I've seen him training today.
That's what I mean. He's trained today. So you sit there and think, okay, so Xavier Worthy is, let's say he's out for the sake of this conversation, that he's out. And people think that Marquise Hollywood-Brown is the next guy up because of that game that happened. Now, I would actually say that Juju is a better... Juju is more aligned to what happens. Marquise Hollywood-Brown is very different. So obviously there's been a schematic shift. So that's where the peripherals and the data point to Marquise Hollywood-Brown being the waiver wire choice. Because if you're going on, well, that player is most like for the player in, so it's a 1-for-1 replacement, like you would in say, Fantasy Premier League, you go Juju. Because Juju to Xavier Worthy, I'm not saying they're similar. I'm just saying they're the most similar of that dynamic. So that's where you have to look at the peripherals of the data that comes out, the targets per route run, and you have to go beyond the box score. You have to look a little bit at the games you're watching. It does have to pass a bit of the eye test, but for me, like, I'll go through some of these numbers, right, of players who perhaps didn't really hit the box score, but all of it. But I tell you now, their peripherals are decent. All right, so kind of put this into practice. Io Manor is one. So he had 82% of routes. He had 77 targets for 133 air yards. And he had a whopping 0.81 targets per route run, which is massive, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of his utilization, it was huge. His utilization there was great. What was his box score? I don't even remember, but I remember it being insignificant. It was... Let's have a look. I can't remember. So, 2 receptions, 13 yards. Right, which is terrible.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you here that I'm looking at the peripherals here. He ran routes 82% of the time. He had 7 targets. He had 133 air yards. It just didn't happen. He's a rookie. There's a learning curve here, but the intent to use him is there. Ida Omeor is a player who is going to have a breakout game.
Yeah, and then everyone will want him.
And then everyone will want him.
Yeah.
So buy him. So get him now for free because you'll be on those people.
Well, the thing is, you could, in a way, like, obviously that's once the season started, but just the fact that he was taken so late, but he was expected to start week 1 tells you plenty as well. So even before you see what he does, if he's there, start picking him up. Like, for a rookie to go straight in and be starting in the first game, when what round did he go in the end? Was it 3 or 4 or something like that?
4th round of the NFL draft.
So, like, that tells you loads already. Never mind what he does in the actual first game.
Yeah, and I think that's such a big point, right? And that's where we're talking about a player who didn't hit the box score, but a player who all the peripherals kind of stand up and look really, really good. And that's really important. If
you look at other people's work as well, I know the likes of Fantasy Points do their rookie thing, and it's a big, massive day. And he was Brett Whitefield's wide receiver. I think he was his wide receiver 2. And he didn't, and then he got picked something like the 15th wide receiver or something mad like that. But he was adamant that he was going to be good, and he scouted him and done a lot of research on him, and he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, I got loads of him. He was my favorite last round pickup where I've drafted a player who's on IR, like an Ayuk or whatever, and I've just picked him up as an addition, and then
I've got him instead
of a kicker. put my player on IR, then pick up the kicker, right? And that's kind of, I did that in like every draft in August, I feel like. So there's, it's as you say, there was a lot of signs this could happen before week 1, but even now he's still available on a lot of waiver wires. And it's those peripherals that you can look at. For running backs in particular, there's things like rushing yards over expected, right? So you look at Bill Krosky-Merritt, and everyone's been talking about, he's probably the most hyped player of the offseason. But he had 39 yards, rushing yards over expected. So it shows up on tape, and he obviously hits the box score. And then this week you get all of this noise that he's going to be the starter soon enough. So, and I think that's what's really key to understand, is that these trends don't just happen because coaches go like, oh yeah. It's a case of trying to understand why this is happening and what can we attribute on tape to statistics that kind of demonstrate that feeling, and what's going on. Like, as fantasy analysts aren't just plucking this out here; they're really looking and measuring this data to truly understand where these trends come from. And I've got a few more that I'll sort of pull out here that are really key, and we'll use some of these as well in some of the questions we got, because I'm conscious at the time is already sort of rattling along. But again, the reason why Harold Fenning was a top waiver wire ad, obviously everyone looks at the box score and is amazed. He had 30% target per route run, which is massive, which was weighted to 0.68, which is just huge. It's a huge amount of production there. And again, those peripherals. We'll look at players that probably didn't hit the box score quite as much just yet. But when we're looking at players who are probably good, like buy low candidates, Cedric Tillman, 94% of routes ran, or he ran routes on 94% of snaps, which is huge. Eight targets, and he closed the season with four straight games of 8+ targets when Amari Cooper happened. So like it's quite a big thing. So it's 5 games in a row he's had 8 targets. He's a thing in this offense. He's a good buy low. The reason why people blew money on Kayshon Boutte, 77% of targets, 137 air yards, and a 0.53 weighted opportunity rating, which basically is the difference between target share and air yards. And there's a mathematical formula for that. But 0.53 is very good.
I never left the draft with Tillman still there. I always took him if he was there, but he was never not picked because he used to. Last season you knew he was already doing it, and then Flacco is going to be throwing it everywhere as well. So it seemed a no-brainer, especially so late in the draft as well.
Yeah, and that's so key. And like for me, when I'm evaluating, say, running backs, I'm looking at a couple of metrics: rushing yards over expected. I'm looking at how many snaps they play. I'm looking at touches. I'm looking at how many routes they're running, and then more importantly, I'm also looking at where they're getting high-value touches, and then I'm also looking at, are they touching it inside the 10, which is touchdown opportunity ratings, right? Which is so massive. And then we look at, wide receivers, targets per route run, weighted opportunity score, air dot. So like Jackson Smith-Njigba, right, has probably one of the stupidest week ones I've ever seen. Jackson Smith-Njigba had a 62% target per route run. He had an air dot of 13.7. And a 1.46 weighted opportunity score, which is just ridiculous. And then 9.5 yards per touch on that. Like that's not it won't happen again. Like that, those numbers are stupid. They're so stupid you can't actually put any meaning to them because they're so far outside of the realms of sustainability that it's just ludicrous. But that is. And like people will look at the JSN usage and think, oh my God, he's a unicorn. He's going to be like wide receiver 3+ for the rest of the season. Like he's going to be in the top 3, top 4. It's not going to work like that because those numbers are just stupid. They have happened in a very specific set of circumstances. When you get data that doesn't make sense like that and usage that doesn't make sense, turns out you don't really see it again all that often. So, you have to look at these peripherals and you have to try and understand the concept, and that's where the tape comes in, and that's why it's really important. But I hope that helps kind of answer your question. But really, you're looking at who's on the field and who's actually running the routes to make plays.
And wait till you've got a few more weeks in it to base your information off.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the key.
Yeah. What do you want to answer some of the questions?
Yeah, I'll take some of the questions. You want to ask him, and I'll fire them up.
All right. So the first one really ties into exactly what we were talking about before. So it's a Mac Jones question. It doesn't have full context. So they're basically saying he's got JJ McCarthy, he's got Purdy, and he's got Mac Jones as the backup. So what he wants to know, we'll have to take some liberties on what league it is, but he's saying it's actually for his other half, I think. And what he's saying is she actually has Olave on the bench. And the question is, so it must be a decent flex if you can have Olave still on the bench. Should he start Olave in the QB flex, or should he play Mac Jones? So obviously, what we've talked about before, we could do in more context around what league is it, what's the scoring, but we don't know that. So if we were saying it was a standard league with standard rules, what would you do?
Yeah, it's really tough. Here's what I would kind of say, that in Superflex, the quarterback is king. Like it really is, right? Think about what a really bad quarterback week is in fantasy football. 10, 12 points is like, you can get some real single digit stinkers, but like, I mean, look, let's put some players out there. I mean, what did Tua get last week?
Single digits anyway.
He might have got single digits, and it's one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Yeah. It just made me think of something. And actually, do you know what I would do if it was me first? I'd be looking at the matchup overall and seeing what's the. Yeah. Am I likely to be winning this comfortably, or am I trailing? Do I need to take a risk, or is it very close and I might want to play it safe and just sneak over the line? You know, I'd be looking at that first before I'd even look at what players I have.
So yeah, there's a couple of things here with Mac Jones, with Mac Jones in general. Now you got to understand that he is in a team that has Christian McCaffrey in it, right?
And no wide receivers.
It's got Ricky Pearsall in it, but the bottom line is you've got Christian McCaffrey, right? So any pass to him, you know, you're kind of going to get yards. We look at his history, and he averages. I'm just kind of taking a look now. He averages about 100 yards a season rushing, which is not much to write home about, but it's also not nothing. And then you look at his history as a starter, and you look at his sort of games. And again, I'm just sort of like, I haven't really prepped for this, but if I look at his like game log, he throws on average at least 220 to 240 yards a game in most games. Not always, but I'm looking at the trends. Like there's 290s mixed with 220s. There's a stinker in there, 174, one, you know, like there's a 111 in there. There's some not great games, but there's also a lot of majoritively through his career, he's consistently thrown over 200 yards a game. So if you set him a line of like 220, right, as a passing game average, right? So 220 yards is 9 points, almost 9 points. If I said 225, it's 9 points. He'll no doubt get some yards rushing, 5 to 10 from the scramble because he won't be familiar. It's another point there. So I'm already at 10 just from his yardage and just from there. And if he throws any kind of touchdown, we're at 16. Unless it's a 4-point, then it's 14. Right? So there's a world that Mac Jones goes 224 or 225, 10 yards rushing, and a touchdown. And then there's 14 to 16 points there, depending on your scoring. Right? And that's a pretty crap there. You can add some interceptions and fumbles in there. That takes him down to like 12. So then you got Chris Olave. So Chris Olave to get the same production.
So that, by the way,
pardon?
They're just looking at the fixtures. They're actually playing against each other. So the San Francisco go against the Saints.
Yeah, exactly. They're playing. Yeah, they're playing Monday, Sunday. They're on the 6:00 slate. So, so then you've got, and then they're playing a crap team, which also helps. So the realm of possibility is that Mac Jones is going to score 12 to 14 points, and that's a pretty safe number, I would say. The 12 feels safe, as that's a safe floor that you're going to get from Mac Jones. Anything you get over that's a bonus. If he goes under, it's not going to go much under that. So then you look at what you get from Chris Olave. For Chris Olave to get that production, he's going to need 6 for 60.
It's basically what he got in the last game. He got 12.4 points, 7 receptions, 54 yards.
How many targets did he get in the last game?
He had 13 targets, but he only got 7 of them.
So he had 13 targets to catch 7 balls for 60-odd yards to 13 points. That's a lot of effort that needs to go your way to get a Mac Jones floor.
And when now, crap QB throwing to you as well.
Exactly that, in a crap team. So then you have to look at the context of your matchup. Are you chasing points, or are you in a good position? If you're favorite, and now listen, projections are one thing, they never tend to happen, but you have a sense of if you think you're a favorite or you're not a favorite in your matchup. If you're a favorite in your matchup and you're not chasing the points, I'm starting Mac Jones because I've got the floor. You're going to get 10 points, 12 points there as a safety net. You might not get too much more than that, but you can pretty much bank those points. Can I say that about Chris Olave? I'd like to think he would, but I think you've got his injury record, you've got a crap QB throwing to him. This is the Saints, who look like they've not done any preparation for the season. And then with no game plan at all, by the way. And then you add into the fact that San Francisco are pretty good on defense. Like he has every chance to exceed Mac Jones, but how much are you going to gamble on that? And is it worth the gamble? If I'm chasing points, I'll go Olave because there's every chance with those 13 targets, he catches 9 for 80 is 15, dinks 1 in the box and gets in the touchdown. It's 20 points. It can happen.
You have him as a wide receiver 28.
Yeah, and I'm just because I just think it's going to be a very vanilla. Like I think he's fine, and that's half point. In PPR, I'd nudge him a bit because he's probably on the fringes of wide receiver 2 because he will get the volume. There's a pathway to get him getting 12 points. There's a pathway to him getting 2 points. I don't think there's a pathway to Mac Jones getting 2 points. I think he's got a double-digit game locked down 9 out of 10 games.
Unless he gets injured like every other 49.
Well, that's it. If he gets injured, if he throws 4 picks, like if we're going crazy, sure. But
logic, yeah.
And so that's where in a super flex, it's like you have to have a good reason not to put the quarterback in your flex, even if they are low down. And they
must have a good team as well to be able to put Olave on the bench at the moment. In that
it could be a shallow league. It could only be like
10 or something.
Yeah, or even it's a deep league, but it's shallow starting spots. Like I don't know, but that's for me more often than not. I would probably play the quarterback, but if I'm chasing the points and I need the upside, I'll probably go with someone like an Olave. But if you don't have anyone as good as Olave, and you've got a wide receiver 3 below. Yeah, I'm sticking the quarterback in no matter how crap they are because there's a pathway to getting 10 points and being crap.
Yeah. Okay. The next question, this is a coin toss because I did some research on this one already, but it's saying which in one QB league he's got Mahomes and he's got Murray, and he's saying who should he be starting? And when I'm looking at your rankings, you have them next to each other. So like. I suppose it comes down to all the other parts of what type of league is it, and is there negative points for things and all that side of things. But if it was a standard one, are you just going for your higher ranked one, or what logic would you do?
If it's 4-point QB touchdown, I'm probably taking. And again, the context of your matchup here is key. I'd probably play Kyler. if it's a 6-point touchdown game, then I'm taking Mahomes because that gives you the weight. The other argument here is Mahomes will be in negative game script, so he'll throw more. But then the quality of the receivers he's throwing to is diminished significantly. Yeah. Whereas I look at Murray's got a great matchup against Carolina, who are crap. I look at what's available to him weapon-wise. He's pretty much stacked, and he'll probably run for 40 yards in the game.
And the second part of the question as well, the other part he was asking, which is probably a lot of people are probably asking, is with Kittle out there, Jack Tongs. You've got, I don't know if when they asked the question whether they looked at your rankings at all, you've got him as tight end 30 at the moment. They're asking, is there any mileage in starting him? It just comes down to who else you've got, doesn't it?
There's not a world that you can start him. Unless you're in a super tight end premium league, and it's like you almost start any tight end if they're on the field. And I'm talking about like 1.5 point perception. Yeah, in a weird dinky league like that, sure, there's a merit to it. No, I took a bit of him because it's the 49ers. There's not that many passing catches. There is a route to him doing something.
I didn't take him in the redraft. I took him in some dynasty ones because I thought if he's playing and he just has a couple of big games, maybe I could sell him for a third or something.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's going to play 4 games. It's not going to be much. I think it takes a game to get up to speed. We don't know what Mac Jones is going to do as well.
Is he going to really start him? Because he's going to go to probably the more experienced players, isn't he, as well?
Yeah, and that tends to be what you would do. There's a chance he becomes a thing. I think that chance is slim. I think he's worth an ad, sure, if he doesn't cost you much. I don't think he's a player I'm starting in any format this week, unless there is no one else. But I'm pretty sure there's tight ends that you can get off waiver wire who are going to be a much better fit. Like if you were that much of a position, you would have got yourself a Juwan Johnson, a Harold Fanning. You would have got off the waiver wire and picked someone up. But yeah, I can't get there with him this week.
It comes back to what you made a point quite early on around people trying to look at, Kittle gets all these throws to him. Someone else, he might not get as many, but they'll get quite a few of them. And they're trying to paint this picture already when all he'll do is throw to somebody else instead because he has more faith in them.
What we've got here, we've got a continuity plan with Kyle Shanahan. We know when Kittle goes down, the replacement tight end doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
They have rarely ever really touched the box score. So just don't get involved. It'll be more going to like Kyle Juszczyk and stuff. Like, nah. There's a pathway. Yeah. Invest in the pathway for $1 or free, then sure. Like, take a chance. He goes and has, like you say, you can flip him or he might have some value and this could be wrong. But one of these, I kind of need to see it to believe it. And especially with something like Kyle Shanahan, I kind of need to see it to believe it.
So the next one is around 2 different types of quarterbacks, and they want your advice on it. So the question is around Fields. So he's the guy, the retro coach. I know you know well. He's asking about this question. He's saying, he's got Fields in Superflex leagues, including Scott Fishbowl. He knows he's got a limited skill set, and the rushing tendencies are unique. So he's basically trying to figure out, should he be starting him or Geno Smith? And he can't quite decide on which ones. So he's saying, obviously, he knows that they're scheming for him specifically, but at the same time, potentially Geno's got better weapons with the likes of Bowers and that. So he's not sure. He's a bit unsure of where he should be going. And again, it doesn't give us full scoring or...
there's not a world I'm playing Geno Smith over Justin Fields in any league, in any place.
Well, then there's the easy one for you.
So Geno Smith, and I like Geno Smith. I thought this was a good trade for the Raiders. This isn't anti-Raiders talk before, Matt Butler comes on and says, it's Murf and he's talking about the Raiders negative. I'm really not.
I didn't realize you had Fields as QB7 this week as well. Yeah, so that answers it quick enough. Like
it's a good matchup, and
it's a smash then for you.
But even just rest of the season, right? Yeah. Like Geno Smith, and again, how many points. Like, I feel like Geno Smith had the most Geno Smith game in week 1. So I think he had like 15, 16 points. He had like over 300 yards passing. He had 17.5 points, 362 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, 1 interception, 24 for 34, 10 rushing yards. I feel like that's a very Geno Smith week.
I love him as my tight end 3, just for a whole.
3.
Yeah.
Safe floor, right? Yeah. You can bang 14 points in your Superflex every week with Geno Smith, right? But he's never getting the 20. Like, he might put the odd 20 point. He threw for 362 yards, and he only got 17 fantasy points. That is Geno Smith. Yeah. He's not going to have these games where he has 3, 4 touchdown games. Then they will happen, but they will not happen often enough for it to have any real value.
So that's QB7 versus QB23. So it's
this
quite
week,
a big gap this week, yeah.
And like, I think Geno Smith as a QB 20, 23, whatever that range is fine. Like, I'm not knocking him. And in real life, he's a pretty decent quarterback. Like, it's no smirch on him. But there is zero upside. There's none. There's no upside with Geno Smith. Those 20-point games just aren't going to happen. Fields is going to get 50 yards rushing every game. And then you add into passing, and his passing has improved. I don't think he's a great passer, but it has improved. Yeah. And then you look at the fact that he's got a Breece Hall, he's got a Garrett Wilson. Like, are we really saying that the Raiders have better weapons than the Jets? Because I'm not there. Yeah. I think they're on par. Yes, Brock Bowers is amazing. Of course he is. And Ashton Jeanty's amazing, but he's also a rookie. I think Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are pretty good too. Like, I don't think we're not talking about like they're nothing here. Like, they're good players.
And then the next question, because you can answer it while you're explaining that, about Jacoby Myers, because the next question here is they've got the questions around between Tet and Myers in a PPR league.
Yeah,
he said they both had solid first weeks. And the amount of the targets were quite similar as well. He feels it's a coin flip, and he's not sure.
It is a coin flip, and effectively the answer is, if you need a safe play, it's Myers. If you need a ceiling play, it's Tet. That's probably not overly helpful as an answer, but
yeah,
I guess for me, how I play
81, you've got them as
and that's in half point. So if I'm playing PPR, I probably have them slightly closer as well. The way I look at this is, in week 2, they're close. By week 7 or 8, I think Tet will separate from Jacoby Myers.
Yeah,
I'm also lower on Tet, right, than the consensus. I'm going to caveat this by saying I am lower than the consensus on Tet. And the reason I'm lower than the consensus is I've watched more Dave Canellas than most people have. And I know that Dave Canellas runs a very basic, very simple scheme that's very easy to interpret if you're on the other side of the ball. And I'm just concerned at how much give there is for Tet McMillan until he gets up to speed. And so I think he'll be fine. Again, I've got him at 29. Like, I'm not sitting here saying he's nothing and he's worthless and you can't start him. The ceiling play is there because he has the talent to break one. And ultimately, he could beat his man, turn him, and hit the house for 50 yards.
Yeah,
Jacoby Myers isn't going to do that. He's barely ever done that in his career. So you've got the safe volume in Jacoby Myers, and you can take your sort of 11 fantasy points that you're going to get off Jacoby Myers and think, I'll take that to the bank. I can write it in ink, and I'm fine. Give me that. Sign me up. I'm done. Or you can take the Tet McMillan house, where he could get a low of 8 or a high of 20.
Yeah.
And so Tet McMillan is a variance play with significantly more upside with a slightly lower floor, versus Jacoby Myers, who's got no real upside, but the floor you could write in ink.
Yeah.
And I think that's it's on your tolerance as a player. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you have to go in one direction or the other. If it's me, that's my team in a PPR league, I'm starting Tet, because I'm going to go and chase the points.
Yeah.
Because I know that the worst case scenario is I'm going to lose 3 or 4. I'll lose 3 or 4. I can make that up somewhere else. If I play that logic more often than not, I'll find the gaps to win, because the upside is the 20. You can get an 8-point plus variance on Myers versus a 4-point negative.
Do you ever play where you say in a team where you've got, say, 2 or 3 of those decisions where you would mix them a bit, and you might play a safe one in one of your matchups, and then another one you play the riskier one?
Yeah, the scenarios would be if I'm near a playoffs spot, and I've got the better team, and I know I've got the better team, and I've got the depth. I can be conservative. I can stack the consistent guys.
Yeah.
And get the dub. And if someone puts a phenomenal performance to beat me, so be it. I think definitely later in the season, I can play more conservative if I'm on the verge of playoff spots and know that I have to basically get the other guy to beat me with some outrageous performances. In this scenario, I think early doors, I'm quite happy in more cases than not to chase the points.
Yeah.
If it's close, if it's like I could lose 4 to gain 8, I'll probably take that. I'm probably not. If I had 3 of those guys in my team, I'd probably do it 2 and hold back on 1.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I would do it. I don't think I'd go whole hog unless I was ahead. Like if I played the guy who smashed it week 1, who scored 20 points more than the next person, for example, then I probably would just spin it and think, well, I'll throw everything at it. If I lose, I lose, but at least I'll go down with a swing.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's what people don't really get with fantasy football is there's a style to how you play. I'm quite an aggressive player. I like to push. So I will always play that angle, because I think for me, I'm always chasing the ceiling plays until like there's a time to play tight and conservative, but it's like poker. But there's also a time to speculate, to accumulate, and see where actually your team could get to in a good week if all things broke right. So, I play Tet if it's my lineup, but I'm also not going to tell someone that they're wrong to play Myers if they want to take the conservative safe play and just take the points if they're a favorite in their matchup. And the good thing is they don't have to make a decision until Sunday. They might get a big lead on Thursday Night Football with the rest of their lineup.
Go for the safer option.
And then they can go with the safe play knowing that they're okay. And that's where, that gameplay kind of really matters. If, like for me, a lot of my lineup decisions, I had Worthy in about 40% of my lineups. So seeing a lot of zeros in that lineup meant I had to get aggressive. So it meant that those decisions were taken out of my hands. So those kind of split decisions that we're talking about, I went aggressive because I'm already down 10 points, 12 points. So that's where those early games really can make a difference. And you have to think about that in your strategy, that if you're at expected, fine, then you've kind of got the same decision. If you're over expected, you might choose to play more conservative. You might not. You might go all out. It's up to you as a player. But you have room for the conservative play.
Yeah. So
if you have a Worthy type scenario, you probably need to get aggressive.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, all of these questions, they all come from the Discord. So there's a channel in there that's basically called Ask Murf. So any questions where you're not sure, if you're listening to this and you want to ask questions, try to put a bit more context around the questions and you'll get a more accurate answer. But that's where all these questions come. People just put the questions in today, knowing the show was going to be on later. And we've answered all the ones that were in there.
Yeah, and I think definitely we'll do more questions. I will try and get answers. Now, here's what I'm going to caveat with this. I'm not answering questions post 4 p.m. on the Sunday. It's not going to happen. Yeah. I've got my own lineups to do. And, at that point, it's I'm gearing up to watch games. Like if you're going to come to me at I had some people last few years who came and asked me questions at 5 to 6, you got no chance. No disrespect to you. It's not happening. So the earlier you get those questions in, the more chance there is. And I will endeavor to answer every question in the Discord within reason. If I get 500 questions, I'm not getting to them. But I will do my best, especially at this point where the volume's relatively low. Then, I will do my best. I'll answer the questions and I'll try and be less wordy than perhaps I'm on here. But I'm trying to explain it to... I fully believe with that teach a man to fish and they'll never go hungry kind of philosophy that, For me, it's really easy to sit here and say, just pick that guy because I think he's good and to give you some stats. But actually, that doesn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like in this podcast, there's actionable things that people can take. Like, if people want to know where to get targets per route run data, where to get, data, I can help you point that out. Some of it you have to pay for. But, if you want to hear more stuff of that, we do that on the Patreon. Join the Patreon. Links below. Sign up for that.
That's part of the reason I wanted to do when you asked me to do this. It was like, well, every week I'll come out of this with a better player and know more stuff. So I'm using it for my own selfish point as well, as to get better. So I'm asking a lot of the questions that I want to know the answers to as well. It's not necessarily just what the people have posted in the chat. So one thing I will say is, I don't know if you want to call out what's in your rankings this week. What is your hottest take where people might be going, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Who do you have number one in a certain position this week?
Yeah, so we'll do that, and I think we'll do the wide receiver cornerback matchups because I teased that on Twitter, and then we'll be done. And so I have Tyler Warren at tight end 1. Listen, for me, I look at the matchup. I think the negative game script there will be a little bit there for him to pick up targets. There's no Kittle. I don't think Brock Bowers is 100%, and I don't love that matchup either. So, I'm kind of just look at it and think there's a pathway to him being number 1. I've not done it for take's sake. That's what I think. I think there's a real pathway to Tyler Warren being tight end 1 this week. Now, you got to remember, tight end 1 is 18 points, maybe not even that. So it's not like I'm expecting him to have like a 40-point game. But I do think he can get in the box. And I think that Shane Steichen has been waiting for a player like Tyler Warren for a very long time. And I think he will really help Daniel Jones get going. And I think Daniel Jones will be better than expected this season as a result of having players like him.
It was the stat I sent to you just before we went on before, and it was showing Tyler Warren and Faye Fannin both got 7 receptions each, which was the most by a rookie in NFL history in the first game of the season. So that alone shows you why you need those two in your team. One already, and then one try and still pick up if he's still there.
100%. And I think there's a pathway to him being there. And I think it's important that we ground it a little bit. And I'm not saying he's as good as Brock Bowers, but he was my favorite tight end by a long way. I was well in on, if you've listened to this show consistently, if you've listened to me on, Dynasty podcast that I guested on, I was all in on Warren pretty early, and he was my favorite player by a long way. And I'm not got him there for bias. I just think it translates the fits perfect. Like I don't think I could have picked a better landing spot for Tyler Warren than Indianapolis. I can think of more exciting ones, but I don't think of better ones for him and for the fantasy production than where he is. So I'm excited to see what happens. But I'm fully believing that he is on his way to a top 5 fantasy season, and he'll be top 1 this week. So we'll see what happens. But we'll go into these wide receiver cornerback matchups. So I've written this column for many, many years, and it doesn't have a home this year, which is fine. And I'm actually not that unhappy not to be writing, so it's fine. So I post them in the Discord, and again, the link's below. Hit the Discord app. It's not on the live. It'll be on the recording. But hey, best wide receiver cornerback matchups this week. And I've gone fantasy relevant. I've got the best 11 because I couldn't stick to 10. And then I've got the worst 12. So the best 10. And again, when you see my rankings, you see certain players higher than others. You'll understand a little bit more as to why. Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Nick McLeod. Zay Flowers versus Miles Harden. Jameson Williams versus Nashon Wright. Devonta Smith versus Chamari Connor even. Wan'Dale Robinson versus Deron Bland. And Chris Olave, who's had much chat, actually has a really good matchup against Ronaldo Green, despite the fact of what I've just said, that as overall that matchup's not great, but this matchup in particular is pretty good and one that can be exploited for Chris Olave. Ronaldo Green, by the way, in his last 10 games is giving up 0.35 fantasy points per route run against him, which is a fancy way of saying that's a shit ton of points. Every time someone runs 3 routes past him, he's giving up a fantasy point. That's a lot. A good number is like 0.1. So like a par score 0.2, 3.5 is bad. So yeah, there's that one for you for context. Tayshaun Boutte might, again, if you paid the fab, you need to stick him in this week. He's got Jack Jones, Drake London against Isaiah Rogers, Malik Neighbors versus Kaya Elam. Debo Samuel has a good matchup this week, although I have been slightly conservative in my ranks. He's against Javon Bullard, and then George Pickens against Paulson Adebo. And then the worst matchups this week, Romeo Dubs against Marshawn Lattimore, Marvin Mims against Xavier Howard. Again, this is a Troy Franklin message. Go get him. You might be a good stash play this week. Matthew Golden versus Trey Amos. So again, this might be a Jaden Reed week, although I have kept them all pretty conservative in my ranks. Tet McMillan has a tough matchup. We talked about Tet. And again, that's why I have him down at 29. He's up against Will Johnson. That's a tricky matchup. Troy Franklin, who I have talked about, has a tricky matchup against Kenny Moore, but it's not as bad as Marvin Mims, and there might be a pathway for him there. Because Courtland Sutton also has a really bad matchup against Javarius Ward. So, again, Troy Franklin could be one of those sort of sneaky under-the-radar plays this week. Xavier Legette is against Max Melton. Nico Collins against Jamel Dean. Jamar Chase versus Jaron Jones. Terry McLaurin versus Carrington Valentine. Travis Hunter versus Dax Hill. And Justin Jefferson versus Mike Hughes. What I put on the Discord, and I'm going to read this out word for word, is word of caution. Terrible matchups don't mean sit. Talent will prevail with the likes of Chase, Jefferson, etc. However, for those fringe, not top 15 options, it's a good equalizer tiebreaker to decide who to sit and who to start. Basically meaning that talent will always prevail. Don't sit the studs. But if you've got those fringe players like a Legette, then that weights quite nicely to maybe look at other players.
There's one more question in the Discord. It was in the start sit one. I just noticed it now from Nev Pony. It's funny because he's asking between two players, and he seems like he's made his mind up over another one. But based off what you were saying earlier, if he listens to this, he may change his mind on that player. So he's basically saying in a flex spot, again, he's not really saying much around the league. Does he start J.K. Dobbins or J-Mo? And then underneath that, he's basically saying Hollywood feels like a must start due to the target volume. Whereas you were saying that may not be the case. So,
I think it is. What I was saying is that Hollywood was not the obvious target candidate before the game, but we've seen the targets in week one because he's not the direct replacement to Xavier Worthy. They're very different players. And that's my point. They're not it's not a like for like replacement. There's a scheme change that happens to facilitate that. So, I mean, look, that's a tricky one, especially when you're looking at cross positions. I'm looking at Denver against the Colts, and I think tough game defensively. The Colts pretty organized, pretty good on D. Amarillo will have them organized. They could stuff that run. Do they then not commit to Dobbins and go to Harvey and kind of go away from Dobbins like they did last week? And then what happens there? So, but he's got Dobbins, and he's got the pitcher, and he's got him as a starter. But he's got Saquon in the flex. So, I'm pretty much like it's basically he is Scott Hollywood Brown in this lineup. The real question is it Jameson Williams or is it J.K. Dobbins? That is kind of where he is at with this, and it goes back to that age-old question: are you chasing points or are you conservative? The conservative play is J.K. Dobbins. Especially given Jameson Williams is week one, but Williams has a great matchup this week. It can easily be exploited. He could very easily see a pathway to 15 to 20 PPR points. That is not a pathway that is open to J.K. Dobbins. Do you want to get aggressive and take the upside and go with Jameson Williams, or do you want to play it safe and go J.K. Dobbins? That's a question for you.
Well, there's another option as well, because I'm looking at his team there, and he's also got what's name in his team. He's starting.
He's actually started. Do you know what? I've just found the answer. He started Calvin Ridley, so he's the one to chip out. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah,
I hadn't even seen that. Yeah, it's a good call. Yeah, I'd probably ship Ridley out. I think Ridley against the Rams is a terrible matchup. The target volume might be there, but yeah, I for me, that might be the play. Take Ridley out, put JMO in, And then you've got Jameson Williams, Hollywood Brown, and J.K. Dobbins in there. So you've got a combination of the safe floor with the high upside. That looks to me like that's probably the most optimal lineup. And yeah, ship Calvin Ridley out this week.
Yeah, I'm just messaging him now.
Normally, I don't get such a definitive answer, but that looks like that's the best play. Yeah, I'd put Calvin Ridley as a possible sit this week in most formats. I don't have him there necessarily in the ranks, but I'm trying to think where I actually do have him this week. I pull my ranks up, make sure they're the most accurate ones. So, because I did move Calvin Ridley before I published, so that's why I need to double check.
Yeah. You had Ridley was down in 37th.
Yeah.
But Jameson was 39th at the time, but obviously, yeah, there's not much in it for a few of them.
Yeah. I think I was very low. Yeah, I think there's two players in here I'm probably revising. I've probably revised up, and I'm probably haven't given you the latest, which is Tillman and Williams. Yeah. And the players that have gone down are, and again, I probably did this on the matchup show where I talked about Judy and Ridley being in the same range, but actually I'm not playing Judy. I played Tillman if I had them both because of that upside.
That leads into another question. If you would if you would order them without going into much detail, if you ordered them from a Browns point of view, in what order would you be looking? Because you've obviously got Tillman, you've got Judy, but you've also got the two tight ends, and then you've got the running backs as well. You know, like where's all the shares going? Like, because they can't all be scoring points.
Are you asking me this is for this week, or are you asking me this for the rest of season?
Probably in general going forward, yeah. How do you see it going? Because that's where people are more interested probably than just this week. It's can they pick any of these guys up if they need to, or is it something that they should be trying to get rid of maybe?
It's a good question. I'm firmly of the belief that Jerry Jeudy is the most talented wide receiver on that roster, and as a result, I think he's criminally underpriced.
Yeah,
I think this is a tricky matchup in general, and I think the Browns are still trying to figure out where they go and what they do. Whilst at the same time being competitive. And I always think the Browns are a competitive team. So to have two tight ends and two wide receivers of their caliber, and they've got, Isaiah Bond is in there that's going to cause a bit of a headache towards the end of the season as well. They've got to have receivers there as well. But I think for me, it's a real clear that Judy is the guy. Yeah. But he will have weeks where he will be missing and ineffective. Tillman feels to me the most consistent guy, but I don't think he has the ceiling. So I think when I balance the season, I think Jerry Jeudy will have the game-winning weeks, but he'll have some very shallow, low-floor weeks. But I think overall will be the leading receiver on his team by a good distance. I think Tillman is a bang-in, take him to the bank wide receiver 3 every week, pretty much. I think there's pathways to where he could get to the wide receiver 20, wide receiver 15 range in a really good week. I don't see those exceptional top 5 wide receiver weeks. I don't see it in him. There's nothing wrong with that. He is like the Browns version of Chris Godwin, and you can stack a very good season that way. There's nothing against that, but it's just is the volume and the ceiling there for him to eclipse him? No. Then you throw the tight ends in, still in Juku over Fanning, but I think Fanning towards the end of the season will be a thing. I think he'll be a real thing. He's a thing now, but I think he'll be a real thing. I think he'll be I think he might usurp Njoku by the end of the season. But I still think Njoku will get more points over the season, and I think he'll stack those in the first 10 games.
And then another question was that I had was around Miami. So, like, are we based off your trade from before? Are we talking about Miami just freaking avoid them at the moment until things settle down? Or
if you've got Devon Achane, fine. If you've got Tyreek Hill, like, you're gonna have to pluck the courage and do it because he can pull numbers out.
What the rest Waddle? Of them? Can you start Waddle at the moment?
No. But we're going back to last season where he was not a startable player.
Yeah.
And I've had people that have been really in on him. and I've not been in on him at any point. And I think I had a good debate on this show with Joe Dolan a few weeks ago where he was in on Waddle, and I was like, I don't see it. Like, help me make sense. And he put a good case across, but I couldn't get there. I'm just, by the way, I'm not being rude. I've just decided I've had enough time to think about that trade, and I'm taking DJ Moore. No, it's done. It's pending. I just thought, yeah, I'm probably out of the Miami business. I might stash some Darren Waller. I think there's a pathway to him because there's nothing on this team. Yeah. So if Darren Waller's around, I'd have him as a stash at the tight end because it's such a garbage position at times. You might find something there. Tyreek Hill could come good, but with all this investigation stuff, I mean, all the noise doesn't look good. Apparently, I don't know what's going on. He could get traded, and if he gets traded and doesn't get an investigation, there's upside there. How long do you want to wait that out? If you want a team that's contending, we'll see. I've pressed the button and gone, yeah, DJ Moore, that feels good. I'll take a top 15 wide receiver. That's fine. I'll bank that. So I think for me, like I'm just out on anyone that's not named Devon Achane in Miami. And I think if you've got Hill, you're probably going to have to wear it and just see how you get on. But, I think going forward, he's going to be one of these players that could come dynamite for you, or he's going to flop you. But hopefully you paid the 4th round price on him and not the 2nd round price. If you paid the 2nd round price on him, then, that's a hard hole to fill. If you paid the 3rd round price, then, you might be okay.
I suppose you better, what's name? Thinking about there's a match on tonight. I suppose we better cover that game tonight.
Yeah, we had. I suppose we better cover tonight's game, and I think it's going to be a really interesting one. Between Green Bay, who are getting a lot of flowers and a lot of hype, and credit to them. They had a good win last week. It's a high over under 48.5 is huge. The Packers favored by 3. I just don't know if I'm there. I thought they spread the ball around a lot. I think offensively, I think it's a really tough game for the Packers to call in terms of who they're going to be sharing to and who's the receiver. Like I said, I think Jaden Reed is probably, if I had to pick a receiver this week that I was going to end up on top, he might be it for me. But at the same token, I think it's really it's a Josh Jacobs week. But if they get too behind the 8 ball, what happens to Jacobs? That will be interesting. Tucker Kraft should be in for a good week. So I think I look at the Packers, it's pretty narrow. I've got Jordan Love at like 15-16 this week. I feel like he can do bits this week. He's kind of in that fringe, but I'm a bit worried about the fact they haven't got a number 1 receiver. They've got a lot of receivers, but they haven't got a 1. Will Golden be a 1? Maybe, but he's not come out of the blocks like Emeka Ibuka has. And I think that will be interesting to see, can he turn that around? And you can't write people off. It's a game, right? But I don't think this is the game for him to announce himself.
Daniels down at all?
I've got Daniels at 5, and I think it's a tricky game, but I'm not really out on him. I think Eckler is the guy I'm probably fading the most here. I think Bill Krusky-Merritt will get some work.
I think trained that much this week. I don't think either.
No, I don't think he's trained much. I think I just think this is not a game that I think I'll be getting cute with Eckler unless I'm sort of desperate. Yeah. But again, and I look at the matchup and think, well, Debo's got a pretty good one. Terry McLaurin's still getting up to speed. If I had to pick between the two teams, I think let's look at the phases of the game. I think that Washington have the better offense. I think Washington have the better defense because Micah Parsons isn't up to speed. He's also one guy in an 11-man D, and I don't think that secondary is particularly great. And I think the pass rush is fine, but I don't think it's elite. I look at that Washington defense. I look at the Washington offense. I think they're better on both sides of the ball. Special teams, I don't know. Maybe it's a push, but I look at that and think Washington are favorites in two phases of the game. And if you win 2 phases of the game, you more likely win the game. So I don't understand why Washington are underdogs in this game. That's a lot of hype. It could happen for the Packers, and fair play if it does. Like, we'll have to take him seriously, but I'm not overly worried about any. The only Washington player I'm worried about is Eckler. the Packers players, I think we know what we're getting with them. They're going to run the football, and they're going to, Tucker Kraft is going to have his, and it's just which wide receiver is the wide receiver with the hot hand this week. And if I was picking, I would say it's Jaden Reed, but there's also a case you can fade all of them. Yeah. So bit of a narrow tree, but I think Washington will. I think Washington will come away with a dub in this game.
Okay. So there's one other thing I was just looking in if there was any breaking news. Like we have the breaking news going into the Discord all the time, from all the what's names, all the so-called in-know people. Judkins done a full training session today. It just showed up in the last 20 minutes. Okay. So that's good for my many Judkins shares in different formats, especially in best ball. I've got loads of them, so I'm very happy to see that he's actually doing training.
It's going to be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see what has prompted that, because if you were believing the noise, he was at NFL offices on Tuesday, discussing a suspension. So either they're not going to suspend him, or it's to come out down the line. And if it is, if you're the Browns, what are you thinking? I don't know. The thing with the Browns is you have to take out any sort of rationale because it's different. I don't see him starting. I don't see him playing on Sunday. He's not trained. He's not signed.
I'm more happy that he's training now. I always thought of him further down the line, late at the back end of the season. But this could mean he could be in by about 4 or something. Well, maybe
that's it. And Jerome Ford was bad.
Yeah,
he was bad. He was really bad. And I like Jerome Ford. I like Jerome Ford a lot, but he was bad, and that's. There's no doubt that has played into the decision here for Judkins to come along. Now, I don't think Judkins is going to do much of anything on Sunday if he even suits up. But there's clearly a trend that by week 3, week 4, if there's no suspension, that Quentin Judd he's going to come in here.
Yeah,
and those that wasted their fab on Samson. If Samson's a pass catcher, he's not going to get as many touches running the football.
There was one thing I noticed earlier in the week when I was looking at a few things. I saw something about the Chargers. I had five snaps of 10 personnel in that game, which was your 4 wide receivers, which was almost as much as they'd done in the whole of last season combined. Are they changing how they're playing, or was it just horses for courses in that one game that they thought that would be a better tactic?
I'd say it was a combination of necessity and the opposition they were playing. So you have to understand that they've never really favored the tight end, so they're not going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So they're either going to run a lot of 11 personnel or 12 personnel. Last season, they ran a lot of 12 because they had 2 running backs in J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. So they could rotate them. And then they had other guys like Vidal and a couple of other guys in there, right, who could come in and do some time. You had Najee Harris with the eye thing. The rest of the depth chart hasn't really kind of stepped up. So, 10 personnel because they don't really play with the tight end all that much, and they don't line up with a tight end that often, and certainly not going to line up with 1 or 2. And then you look at where their strength and depth is in that roster. Now they've got Keenan Allen. It's wide receiver. You've got Trey Harris, who they drafted high. You've got Johnston, who's a former first-round pick. You've got Lad McConkey, who was drafted high and was their league receiver. And you've got Keenan Allen, who doesn't need a lot of time. He's a very experienced professional. So you play to your strengths in the sense of where have you got the most depth and the most personnel. That's always going to be a part of it. But I also think there was a part of playing the Chiefs and knowing that they had some success running the football, but it was harder to run the football against that team. They were going to have to play them out wide and get out on the perimeter, and then try and steal yards over the middle. And 10 personnel is a good way of doing it. Will we see more 10 personnel from the Chargers? Probably, especially in the early parts of the season. Will it be a thing? I don't think so, because I think they'll sort the running back problem out at some point, and they'll have the depth. And
so there was something that come up in the week, and it had a bit of a discussion, and people had different views. This was in our WhatsApp chat. I just thought it was one for here where just to give your opinion to a bigger audience was around what's her name, Charbonnet versus what's her name, Walker. As in, like the way I read that was Walker wasn't up to speed yet. He was light in training, so they gave more to Charbonnet. But then there's other people in the group who were thinking there could be a bit of a change over here where Charbonnet is going to be getting more snaps than what he was getting last season. So I suppose throw over to you to what you think on that one.
Yeah, and I talked about this on our Patreon cast, right? So I kind of have done this, and I think for me where I leaned in on this was I always expected Charbonnet to have a bigger week one, and the reason I expected him to have a bigger week one was because of the fact that he was the incumbent. He had a good sort of preseason. He looked sharp. He was strong. He was basically the fit guy. Kenneth Walker was not. Kenneth Walker didn't train much. He wasn't around as much as people would have liked. And that's a big problem is, you go with that sort of consistency of what's been working. So to see what happened, and I'm just pulling up the charts here of the week, I'm looking at this as a Ken Walker owner thinking I'm actually not too unhappy with what I saw, and there is very limited concern. There is some, but it is limited. So if I pull the numbers up, the touches were relatively similar. I'm just trying to I've just lost it. Where is it? Here it is. So I just pulled it up here. So if you look at this, the snaps were 60-40 effectively in favor of Charbonnet, which is to be expected. Charbonnet ran routes 38% of the time, Walker 33% of the time, so close to the same. Walker had more high value touches, and they had the same number of low value touches. So what that means is that effectively low value touches is just the stuff up to sort of the 20-yard line that's not going to yield first downs, etc., things like that. The high value touches is the stuff like first downs and scoring opportunities, right? But Charbonnet had 3 of the 4 carries inside the 10. That's the only concern I'm walking away with. And Kenneth Walker didn't look brilliant. He had minus 21 yards over expected rushing, which isn't good. So 21 yards under expected. So there's still a bit of rust there. But again, I look at the peripheral numbers, and yes, Charbonnet was on the field more. But actually, the touches, Walker out touched him. He ran routes similar amount of times. It was just the green zone. So inside the 10, that was the issue. That should rectify, I would imagine, with a fully healthy Walker. But it is one to keep an eye on. So if I'm a Ken Walker owner, I'm not too dissatisfied with what I saw in week one, other than it didn't really translate to the box score. And that's where those peripheral numbers really make a difference.
Okay. And then the last thing I've got on my list of things today was
the odd ninth last thing.
Yeah, what's name? Yeah, FSCC. So how that's going, and I've just noticed in the Discord what the what's name is for the week, the Squid Games task. So that'll be quite interesting. I'll let you tell them that.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to tell them. I think you can go into the Discord and see it. I'll share it in the chat tomorrow.
It could be quite a lot of people getting knocked out of that this week.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I don't know. It's a premium. It's not too bad. I think it would be a better game because there's some interesting prompts for the Squid Game. So 68 and that 256 advance to the main event. The draw is done. So in 2 weeks, if you're in the main event now, I've just got to sort out the fixtures in Sleeper, which I'll do tomorrow. I meant to do it sooner. It's just not happened, but we'll do that. So if you're playing someone in the same division, you actually see who the team is and playing them over the 2 weeks. So we'll get those set up. But the prompt is in the Discord for people to see, so you can see what you need to hit this week. So yeah, check it out, and you can also sign up to next year's, which will be good. So yeah, do enter the FFCC for 2026. Sign-ups are in Discord, they're in the league chats. So yeah, sign up for 2026 if you don't know what we're talking about. But here it's a charity tournament and it's got Squid Game and it's fun. We'll put a link in the bottom of the show notes and you can find it there.
Yeah, they're my questions. Just one for the guys listening is that we've got there's about 8,000 subscribers to here on the X channel, but we set up a Blue Sky one recently. There's about 30 something people following it so far. So if you use Blue Sky and obviously you're following us, make sure you look at that as well. That's got a lot of videos going in from the YouTube that the other guys are doing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do hit the like and subscribe on the YouTube. That means a lot to us. The numbers have been really good, record numbers for us over the last few weeks. So we really appreciate that. So please help us keep that momentum nicely. It's going to mean the world to us. So keep subscribing, keep liking, keep writing comments, trying to reply to comments as much as possible. So yeah, really important that you keep just integrating, and then give the guys at 5 Yard NFL a bit of love. They're doing really well in their first few weeks as a podcast. It's engaging, it's fun. So yeah, make sure you give them a like, a subscribe, a follow. It's on the same channel, so you get it all there. But give them some comments too, and some love, and some crap if you want to as well. But I think that's going to do it. It's an hour 41. It's a long show. Shouldn't have been this long. But Danny with his 31 last things that he said, just one last thing. I'm going to clip that out. I'm going to clip a video of that, of you saying one last thing, like how Coach Speak, Greg Gaines did of Liam Cohen doing Duval.
There's no point. If I say I've got loads of questions, you're going to be like, oh. Whereas if I just slowly get them in, I get all of them then.
Yeah, true. But it does mean this is going to go out tomorrow and not tonight. But that's fine. You'll get this first thing in the morning. Good luck to everyone tonight. Enjoy the game. And until next week, Rush Nation, don't forget, as always, good luck in week 2. Stack up those dubs and keep rushing.